Oh, I didn't realize I was muted. Are you ready for me to let everyone in?
Yes. Let's go. Hi, you guys. Erin.
Hi,
Hi.
how's it going?
Good. Did you dye your hair?
Yeah,
Oh, it looks amazing.
thanks. I'm doing it at home. I'm so proud of myself.
I love it. It's like copper.
Yeah.
So we'll get started in 2 minutes. So as you arrive, just really taking a moment of transition between whatever it was you were doing before, wherever you were in space. Just taking a moment to arrive, noticing, and as you arrive, noticing if there's anything that your body needs, whether it's putting on clothes, taking off clothes. Me and Amanda are both wearing tube tops today. If you need some water, a snack, different positioning with your body, maybe a support behind you. Okay. Oh, thanks you guys for joining live. It's always really fun to have people in um, the live workshop. Okay, so I'm just pulling up my notes here. All right. So uh-oh. Before we fully get started, I just want to do some housekeeping. So, just so you know, this is being recorded. The audio and video recordings will go on my podcast and my YouTube channel. So, just know that if you come off of mute, if you share your video and you talk, it will be recorded, so just keep that in mind throughout the workshop. Another thing is that if you would like to ask a question or share something in the group, you are super welcome. Amanda is my assistant, and she just dropped. She was telling me there was a lightning storm coming through her her place, so it's possible that she lost connection. But if she comes back online, wait, is Amanda there? But if she comes back online, you can send her a private DM and she'll introduce whatever have, either a share or a question, into the space anonymously. So that's a way to anonymously share. Um, if she doesn't come back on for whatever reason, at the end, you can send a private DM to me and I can do that. And then before we do our grounding, just to orient into what this is. So, this is a free intro workshop to really just introduce this topic of what sexual fawning is. So, we're going to dive into how it's defined, how it might show up in different contexts, in your body. Um, there's a lot there. So we're just really introducing the topic and we're going to have a lot of discussion and things like that around this topic. So this is a topic that we're going to go a lot deeper into in my upcoming 6-month course, Shed, which is a 6-month virtual slow group where we go really deep into different areas of fawning. So how fawning, there she is. How fawning shows up in your body, how to map it in your nervous system. We're going to do a whole month on sexual fawning, a whole month of fawning at work, fawning with family, how to understand anger and boundaries, and then inner villain work. So it's going to be really deep, and the idea is that it's long enough and deep enough for it to be transformative. It's not like a little one-off thing where you learn tools and then you implement it on your own. There's enough time for integration. So that's why I'm really excited. And Amanda's going to be assisting us for that as well. Hi, Catherine. I saw you signed up. I was so excited to see your name. Okay, so with all that being said, we're gonna get started. So we're just really allowing your body to arrive here in this space. So taking a moment to even take your energy and your awareness away from the computer and start to orient in the space that you're in. Really allowing your eyes to wander, your neck to turn. Noticing the parts of your space that maybe create more activation or tension, and the parts of your space that create an opening or a softening. And when you find a part of your space or a pet or an object or whatever it is that creates that opening and softening, go ahead and take a moment to bring your awareness to it, noticing how it lights up or opens in your body. Maybe bringing a hand to that part of the body that opens or softens in response to this external resource. And just taking a moment to really let that resource in. And then noticing if there's any other parts of the body that would like to receive support. And taking a moment to first just acknowledge that part of the body and then maybe bring a hand or hands to that part of the body as well. And noticing, getting curious how your body, this part of your body asking for support, responds to your touch, how it responds to being witnessed. Getting curious about what kind of pressure this part of the body needs. And again, just taking a moment to let in that support. What does it feel like to let that in? Taking one more moment here of arrival. Noticing if there's any parts of the body that are unclenching or softening. And not doing that for the body, but just getting curious if that is happening and how it's happening. Really tuning into the support around the body, any support behind the head, the back, under your legs or your butt. Feeling the solidity of the floor of the chair that you're in. And then just noticing what comes up with the idea of this topic of sexual fawning? So, what happens somatically in the body? The breath, the belly, the chest, the throat. Any images or words that come to mind? And just knowing that if at any point you experience overwhelm, the option to pause, to mute, to turn away from the screen, to orient towards a resource either around the body or external to you is always available. So, whenever you're ready, coming back into this space, if your eyes are closed, maybe blinking them open, noticing how it feels for the body to know where it is in space, know what's around the shoulders, what's behind me. All right. So, before we move forward, I do want to mention that we will be talking and mentioning things today like sexual coercion, rape, dissociation, um, some sexual assault, things like that. So just care for yourself throughout this workshop. And I would even use this space and this experience as a somatic practice of just checking in. We're going to have check-ins throughout. But just noticing, is this something that's within my capacity today in this moment? Do I need a breath? Do I need a break? Do I have capacity to sit with this? Okay. So, let's do a little check-in. I want to hear what happens in your body when you think of the idea or this topic of sexual fawning. So go ahead and take a moment and reflect, and then drop it in the chat, and Amanda will read it out loud. Any sensations, thoughts, images?
Yeah, so I feel fear. There's tightness in my throat, tension, constriction in the throat, and also feeling of losing control and numbness in my pelvis,
Hmm.
feeling small, annoyed for feeling obligated or guilted for doing things that I don't like doing.
Hmm.
I feel confident. I do know I can fall into a role/behavioral pattern when I am sexually attracted to someone, but that's not the case at this moment in this situation. A bit of an icky feeling, shame and embarrassment.
Thank you guys for sharing. I know for myself, I feel a sense of constriction as well around this topic. And I just want to mention too that this is something that is individual and it's also very cultural. So I just want to say that before we move forward. Okay, so I'm going to briefly define what fawning is, just to make sure that we're all on the same page in regards to language. And then we'll move into particularly sexual fawning. And I know some of you guys, I've seen you in my other workshops, so you might already be familiar to what fawning is. And so as you hear this, just notice if there's anything fresh or new that comes up, not even in terms of content, but even just through your own experience, your own felt sense of the work or the experience of fawning. All right. So fawning is the fourth F. So we have four different stress responses that arise when the body is under stress. They are completely unconscious, reflexive supports that happen to optimize the survival of you and your body. So we have fight, which is when you move towards the threat to fight it. This is a high sympathetic charge, so there's lots of energy. We have flight, which is when your body moves away from the threat. Again, high sympathetic, energetic charge. We have fawn, or I'm sorry, freeze, when the body decides the safest thing is to no longer exist. Means lots of numbing, dissociation. It's known as the savior response because mentally your body, there was some talk of this in the chat, your awareness is taken out of the experience to um, spare you the experience of living this trauma. Um, there's, yeah, numbness, dissociation. There's also a physiological experience of being frozen. So it looks like a very activated, still state. So even though you're maybe not moving, maybe not breathing as deeply, it's very activated. So it's coupled with tension. And then finally, we have fawn. So, fawning is when the body decides that its best bet at survival is to appease the very thing that is causing stress in the body. So, it's different from the previous three because it's a social, relational response. And this can get very confusing because we might start to think, oh, it's my personality. Um, it's so effective at performance that sometimes we fool ourselves, and that's, I think, very pertinent to the topic today. And it's, again, it's unconscious and it's um, reflexive. So that can look like an acute situation, and we'll kind of go deeper into what that means later in the workshop, but can be acute. So, like, let's say there's a situation where I'm fearing for my life and I'm fawning with the person so that they don't hurt me. And then it can also be chronic. So if I'm walking around in a stress state, um, then that will happen naturally in, I don't want to say all relationships, but it might happen more frequently when you're engaging relationally with people. So, really, the idea with this one is to appease the person to de escalate the threat. So, what this might feel like somatically is again, it's often coupled with freeze response. So, you might have the somatic experience of freeze where there's constriction, bracing, sense of collapse in the body, a numbing. And then there's that performance aspect of smiling, animation, softening the voice, making yourself more quiet, saying yes when you don't want to, maybe a higher tone, talking from the chest instead of the belly. Okay, I'm gonna pause here. Amanda, is there anything you'd like to add about just general fawning?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just that there's like not a connection to yourself. Your awareness is so much more on the other person, and you're not including yourself in the interaction.
Yeah, so there's that element of freeze that comes in and numbs your connection to self, your own experience. And then there's the performance aspect of fawning, of performing connection with other. Yeah, that's a great point. Anything else?
I feel like that's pretty good. I'm
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay, so to further break down fawning, and this I think is very applicable to what we're going to be talking about today. There's so many more types of fawning than these two, but for the sake of understanding, we're going to break it down into two types of fawning. So there's more defensive fawning. So think about someone like coming towards me. I'm on a subway car and I'm feeling kind of trapped and some guy is coming up to me and there's more defensive fawning where I'm trying to settle their system. So for example, if I start to fight or tell them to F off, that might cause activation in their system, create an escalation of the situation, perhaps put me in danger. So there's a defensive fawning where I'm trying to settle you so that I stay safe. And it's more of a, when I think about the body language of this one, it's more of like a leaning back and like my hands come forward, like, oh, we're good, we're good. Like, calm down, buddy. Like, I'm on your side. Everything's cool. So just even as I say that, just noticing how that shows up in your body, if it inspires any gestures or images of what that might look like for you. And then we have more performative appeasement. So I think this is a very different texture and quality than the defensive one. So this might look like going towards someone to secure connection. So we're trying to stay likable. This might be in a like a less threatening situation, but it's more to animate the other person. I just did an interview with Ingrid Clayton where she gave a great example of I'm getting a kink in my back sitting like this. Where she gave an example of like a little kid who's being emotionally neglected at home, and they go towards the parents and are like, "Hey, mom," da, 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 da. They're trying to animate the other system. So I'm actually trying to create something in the other system, whereas the defensive fawning is more of a trying to bring down the activation. So, just noticing how the performative appeasement might feel even as I talk about it. And both come from a deep somatic strategy, again, unconscious. If I can't run or fight, I'll make myself likable, pleasing, and non-threatening. Anything you'd like to add, Amanda?
Yeah, I love the way you talk about the connection between the performative fawning and like the way a child might subconsciously merge with their caregiver. And I think when that happens, you like literally are projecting the caregiver's needs and desires onto yourself. Like you don't understand where that line of like what's truly your need and what's their need ends. Like it all just becomes one thing. So then you can see how if you're an adult and you're in a sexual situation, that can get really blurry really quickly.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned just the topic of enmeshment too. That's very present in this experience of fawning, of merging with the other person. Again, that numbing experience of I don't even know what's happening inside, so I'm just gonna try to figure out what's happening inside of you so I can take care of it, I can put out the fires and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in your window of tolerance, you're really able to like relate from this really open space where it's like there's like so much more fluidity to it. And there's actually a sense of like me and what I need and what's right for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up too, because even as I say those two things, like we would say maybe what's the opposite of this experience would be they call this ventral vagal in polyvagal theory. So that's connected to self, I'm connected to other, and I'm connected to my environment. So there's a presentness of I'm able to be creative, curious of my own experience while I'm also talking to you. So it's a really different experience. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a different nervous system experience.
Yeah, yes. It's more to me responsive than reflexive.
I love that.
Like when I'm stressed and I'm acting from that place, I'm just like reacting. Whereas when I'm connected to myself, I can respond. And there's more of a time, the element of time that's present.
Yeah. And like actually your sense of self is there.
Yes, because I feel with fawning, something disappears. It has to, because I can't be connected to myself and also be completely giving myself to you. It just doesn't, that's not possible.
Yeah,
Any last thoughts before we move forward?
I feel ready to move on.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna say this for a moment, just adding the element of time before we move into the next topic. Maybe checking in with yourself, noticing if you need anything. I need a sip of water, so I'm gonna take that now.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt you in case everyone else did hear you, but it looks like, can you guys hear me right now? Okay. I wonder if it's
Yeah,
my
I
mic.
hear you.
Okay.
Test. Okay,
You're back now,
that
Kelly.
was weird. Okay, thank you for checking that, Amanda. That would have been horrible to teach the rest of the workshop with no audio. Okay, did you hear any of that?
Last thing we heard was I'm gonna take a sip of water.
Oh, okay. That's really strange. Okay. So I was just saying, I'm very aware that we are half an hour into the workshop, halfway through, and we're just now getting into the topic now of sexual fawning, and that's very much on purpose, because of the cultural overcouplings around this topic and individual experiences that we may have that make it um, texturally very sticky. I wanted to really resource at the beginning and really provide, once again, that connection to self as we move through. So, okay. So, to define sexual fawning, just the definition, sexual fawning is using sexual energy, flirtation, performance, or consent we don't fully mean or give as a strategy to feel safe, avoid conflict, or secure connection. So as you hear that, notice that, just notice what happens inside. So, some examples of that might look like initiating sex to soothe a partner or avoid being left, laughing at sexual jokes at work, performing enjoyment while not actually enjoying something or being dissociated, hypersexualization, participating in kinks that activate a trauma response, and you're not actually able to stay present or feel pleasure. It's really more of an a way to leave the body. So one thing that Gabor Mate says is that um, what not just sexual fawning, but fawning in general, we bypass authenticity to secure attachment. And attachment and connection is so important for ourselves and our bodies. And so this is a way, fawning and sexual fawning are both ways for the body to secure attachment, but we are bypassing and circumventing our own authenticity and maybe losing it completely when we do this very chronically. So, we'll do questions at the end, but feel free to drop them in throughout. Okay, so I want to pause and ask you guys because I think that there are pros and cons to sexual fawning. One pro, I'm securing connection. One con, I'm losing connection to self. So go ahead and take a moment and let's put in the chat the pros of sexual fawning. What do you gain by sexually fawning? And then Amanda will read it from the chat.
So, what do you gain? Feeling in tune with my body, gaining confidence. You gain attention, and the opposite of feeling abandoned. Totally. I don't see any pros the way you described it. You said you can respond when you're not fawning, and that you should be enough response to connect. Oh, and that should be enough response to connect.
Can you read that one more time?
Yeah, I don't see any pros the way you described it. You said you can respond when you're not fawning, and that should be enough response to connect.
Oh, yeah. So, like, you can respond from a ventral vagal state. Yeah. That's what I understand that as is like you have the option to also respond from a connected ventral vagal state and you
Mm,
don't have to fawn. We'll come back to that later.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
That's all that's in the chat right now.
Okay. So I'm reading Parvati Shallow's book right now. It's called No Nice Girls Don't Win. And she talks about how she would go to work as a waitress and she would flirt with these people and she would get tips from people and she would really use flirting as a way to connect and secure attachment with and get what she wanted with casting directors, with men, with women. Um, to make friends, to have a trail of boys behind her that wanted to date her. It felt like this really empowering thing for her. And was that built on a inauthentic, I don't want to say inauthentic personality, but performative connection? But I think there are pros to it, and that's why we do it. And I just want to acknowledge that before we move into the cons. Um, so one last thing before we move into the cons is that um, you might be seen as this like cool, chill. Oh, she's so chill. I'm not a chill girl. I will see that till the day I die. But um, being chill, being seen as easygoing, it might give you a sense of control over the situation, and it may prevent over conflict. Let's move into the cons because I feel like we're already there. So go ahead and drop your cons in.
You
What are the
already
cons?
have a con in the chat.
Yes.
So, more likely to do it in the future because your brain and body remembers that experience. You're not really being honest, which is important and it's important for me to be real and genuine, but it feels
Yep.
exhausting and I feel disempowered. Yeah.
Disempowering, exhausting. Yeah, it's exhausting.
And you're more likely to like build a relationship on that being okay.
Yeah, you're teaching your partners what to expect.
Hmm.
It feels gross. Yeah.
Dishonest with myself. Yeah. Feel detached from myself. Not sure if I'm actually enjoying myself and not staying quote unquote in the moment during sex.
Mm. Detachment from self, from pleasure. How can I access my pleasure if I don't even know if my body likes what's happening?
It does not create real connection, so there's no long-term gain.
Mm.
Difficult to set boundaries with the person afterwards. Totally.
Okay, we'll pause there and I'm gonna go through my little. Actually, go ahead and read that last one.
Feel like I'm being fake, and that brings up sadness.
Mm.
Yeah.
I feel that. So there's disconnection from self, which I'm getting an overall feeling that that alone is disturbing. Disconnection from pleasure, desire from your partner, after effects of confusion, shame, self-abandonment, resentment or numbness in long-term relationships. And I think resentment is a great word. This happens also in fawning that is non-sexual because I'm not able to connect to my needs, maybe even feel them. Again, that element of the numbness. So how can I express my needs if I can't even feel them? And then, of course, that causes resentment in relationships. And then finally, sexual trauma without overt violence. And we're going to cover that um, in a moment as well, because like how that can happen. Okay, so I want to really differentiate there's different kinds of sexual fawning. Um, there's sexual fawning that involves violence that happens under threat. So if you think coercion, assault, I'm thinking of how do you say this, Amanda? Weinstein, Henry, what was it?
What is his first name? Weinstein, but
Weinstein. We don't need to know his first name.
screw him.
F him. So Weinstein, that whole, sexual power dynamics in business settings. So all of that has a very different feel than sexually fawning with a safe partner. So I want to differentiate that. So I want to talk for a moment about sexually fawning under threat. Sexually fawning under threat is a fucking amazing nervous system response simply because when there is this, well, fawning in general is an incredible response of the body, but um sex has a very sympathetic charge. So there's a lot of activation that happens in sex without the element of violence present. So when we have this sexual activation coupled with violence, there's so much upward sympathetic charge that sexually fawning, again, that defensive fawning, is a way to either prevent the escalation of that activation where maybe I could get hurt, I could even get killed, and bring that activation down. So it's a brilliant, brilliant, incredibly intelligent response of the body to survive. Again, paired with freeze, that savior response of, I'm gonna take you out of this. I'm going to numb so that I don't have to fully experience this horror. It might feel like in the body a freeze response. There might be um, even sexual responses from the body. So for a woman, that might look like becoming wet. For a man, that might look like having an erection because the body is performing. This can also be very confusing for the person that is sexually fawning because it might feel like I just experienced this horror. Did my body like it? There was a performance of consent. And so there's often times after these horrible assaults, a a presence of confusion and shame that is furthered by the cultural narrative that does not like this response in court. People might say, well, why didn't you fight back? Things like that, because the body's intelligent and it wanted to keep you safe. So this is a very different experience than sexual fawning with a safe partner, and I really want to name that before we move. Today we're talking more about sexually fawning with safe partners, but I really want to name that because this is a response that in the acute experience is life-saving. So just noticing what's happening as I talk about this. And then Amanda, I'm curious if there's anything you'd like to add here or what you think about this.
Yeah, I love that you like really clearly made that distinction because such different experiences. And also, I think Aaron, it was who asked this question of like, can you feel pleasure and still be fawning? I feel like this is where it can get so confusing because you absolutely can. Like, you can feel pleasure, but be fawning. Because fawning's about survival, it's not actually about desire, but you can go along with it to avoid the conflict, but still, like you said, experience the physiological arousal and maybe even orgasm. But that doesn't mean the body can register that stimulation in a pleasurable way, even if your deeper motivation for engaging is fear or shame. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That's so good. Did you have something else?
Mm.
So good. There's this term and I can't call it to mind right now. Amanda, if you know it, you can let me know. But it's when there's a disconnect between the sexual arousal experience and someone's feelings. So for example, you can be feeling disgust and also have a sexual arousal response in the body. And that can be really confusing. And down the road, it can start to couple sex with disgust, with confusion, with fear. Um, but I forget what it's called. There's a whole science behind that, but it's definitely very real, and you absolutely can experience pleasure during sexual fawning.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I've never heard of that. I'm gonna Google it though and see if I find it, I'll put it in the chat. But yeah, I think also like just because you're feeling pleasure doesn't mean you're actually consenting too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, awesome.
just, what's that?
I'm gonna Google the term.
Okay, yeah, that would be great because I think that's a really validating topic to hear about because it's a whole science. So, all right. So noticing how that lands in your system. And then we're going to now move into talking about sexual fawning when you are not under the threat of violence, when you are not under the threat of um, perhaps having your job taken away, like in the Weinstein cases, where there was, the possibility of someone maybe not paying their rent or not earning their livelihood. So we're taking that out of the the mix, and we're going to now talk about there's no threat of violence, there's no threat of um I don't want to say there's no true threat, but there's no what's the word, there's a I don't know, I can't think of the verbiage, but we're with a safe partner now, or safe enough partner. So with a safe enough partner, this might look like a performance. So mm, exaggerating, feeling a sense of disconnect of from my body's experience, over attuning, over giving when it doesn't feel true to self. A pressure to please the other person or prioritize their experience. It might feel like that freeze response of constriction, of numbing, of dissociation, while also performing with a smile. Really, what's present here is the lack of connection to self and the element of performance in a sexual context. Maybe the body says no, but your mouth says yes. And so there's this incongruence between what the body wants and what is actually happening. And that's when sexual trauma can happen in a non-violent context, simply because of the incongruence between, for example, if you are having a sexual experience with someone and the body needs space, it needs a breath for whatever reason. There's something we're going to go deeper into in Shed where we talk about activation and deactivation cycles of the body, which happens naturally activation, deactivation. So there's times where we move into a deactivation, the body needs to slow down, it needs space, it needs a breath. And instead of saying to your partner, I need a minute, I need space, whatever it is to communicate that need, we just override it and we continue on to appease the person. That can create an incongruence and sexual trauma when there is no violence present. So I wanted to say that because I know that's something that a lot of people relate to. Um, even in safe enough partnership. Amanda, do you have anything you'd like to add here?
Yeah, I think just it's so interesting to really highlight how fawning in those situations can just feel easier than asking for that pause if your body's really overstimulated. And that can get into all like the reasoning behind that, and your unique system can get into all kinds of different past things, but it's just easier. Like it's just easier to go with it.
It's sometimes the path of least resistance.
Totally. Yeah. And going back to that point earlier about like, well, if I'm feeling pleasure, am I fawning? Something that just came to me is like, I actually think your body can like probably even trick you into experiencing more pleasure as part of the fawn response, if that feels safest in the moment.
Totally. Like you said, the experience of having orgasms, or yeah, I mean, it's a performance that is so good that it can even fool self.
Mm-hmm. And in these
Academy Award, baby.
yeah, right. And
Yeah.
in these intimate relationships where it's like this person actually is safe, maybe there's already a lot of rapport, but maybe your deepest desire is like to feel connected to them so they don't leave. Then, especially in a situation like that, your body can trick you into thinking, like, this is what I want. This is amazing.
Yes, it secures connection. I think that's the biggest thing in safe relationships is that our body is acting to secure connection. Yeah. Okay, so before we move into questions and just a check-in, I want to give in some more examples of sexual fawning because sexual fawning is not exclusively in the context of sexual assault or intercourse. It can look like when you're a kid and a creepy uncle tries to hug you and you're like someone else in your family goes, "Hug him, honey," and you feel this weird creepy sexual energy from them. And so even from a young age, we're conditioned and encouraged to override our own experience to appease other. Um, it might look like hypersexualizing self in order to gain control. Again, I think the Parvati Shallow's book is such a great exploration into this. What becomes available to you when you hypersexualize self and sexually fun laughing at jokes from creepy men at work. I used to do that all the time when I worked in restaurants, from the guys in the kitchen to the guys that I was serving. You got to secure your tip. You don't want to make it awkward at work. So sexually fawning there, agreeing to sex you don't want to avoid anger. Again, engaging in kinks that might activate a stress response. Um, More of an activated, constricting stress response instead of an opening and true pleasure. Um, Not expressing boundaries in bed, maybe saying, I don't like that, and then wanting to appear to be the fun, easygoing partner. All right. So let's take a moment and check in. What is happening right now in your body? Is there anything that I just want to take the next 10 minutes to explore what is coming up for you. If you have any questions, if you have any epiphanies or connections that you are making on your end. And as you're reflecting on that, Amanda, is there anything you'd like to add before we move into sharing?
came up for me earlier. This is going back, I guess, a little bit, but just how much the fawn response can lead to passive aggression, especially in these intimate relationships, because it's like this roundabout way of trying to express your resentment or like hurt the other person in the way that they hurt you, like try to make them feel the pain that you felt. And
Yeah.
ultimately the path of healing is like getting the clarity and the strength within yourself to actually just own like, hey, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I need and want. But we get into all these like messy entanglements through fawning, and the passive aggression is like a lot of where that can manifest.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that came to mind for me when you said that was um, because of the numbing agent that is present in fawning, we don't maybe have even access to our needs or our resentment in present time. So when you start to do this work, it might look like working with hindsight. So saying, talking to your partner after saying, I didn't mention it in the moment, but upon reflection, I'm really feeling like, I didn't like XYZ. Can we do this differently in the future? Eventually, we start to create more connection to self where we can become aware in the moment and express in the moment. But again, that includes building capacity for others' disappointment, which is something that we will also work on in Shed because that is in tandem with expressing what you need.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. That's such a good point because there were so many moments for me personally in my journey where I realized in retrospect, like, wait,
Yeah.
that felt empowering in the moment, but in hindsight, I was just trying to protect myself. And it took a long time to even realize that. And then a whole other long time to be able to express that in the moment.
Yeah, and I also, yeah, that's a great point, is that um this work, I don't like using the word fixing or healing this because it's such a process. This can take years. Like I just did a sexual fawning course with Holistic Life Navigation, and he's like, this took me years, like 5 years to really get to the point from having no voice during sex to being able to express my needs as they come up in that context. So I just want to say that as well because it is a process. The body likes to move slow, so changes happen slow.
Yeah, it's so different than the way that we're used to thinking about everything. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go take this medicine.
Can't I just take a pill to to
No,
help
it
with this?
doesn't really work that way.
I wish. Is there any thoughts or questions that you guys would like to share? You can put it in the chat. Yes, Catherine. You can also anonymously or private message Amanda if you'd like it to be anonymous. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am hoping to wrap up the call with some pointers towards healthy interaction, like to say it in a positive way, uh, to kind of not leave us hanging in that sense, because it was focused on what to avoid. So far, we've been talking about what to avoid. Yeah, that
Yeah,
I'm grateful for that.
I hear you. You want some tools to positively move forward with this information.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, I will say for today, the main focus was just awareness. And I can even give that as the main takeaway of just understanding what sexual fawning feels like in your body. Even like, I don't know if you were taking notes or taking observations of how um it feels in the moment. You can do this after the workshop of reflecting on times that you've fawned sexually and what does that feel like for you in your body to be in relation to someone and fawning sexually. So the somatic experience, my stomach clenches, my throat gets tight, there's a sense of immobilization. Maybe I start to over exaggerate. So then in the moment, when you are in a sexual context, you can have these moments of check-in with the body. And I do this frequently where I'm like, what is happening in my body? Am I constricted anywhere? am I feeling open? If I'm feeling constriction, I don't need to know why, but maybe I just take a moment, or I ask, can I just take a breath? Can we slow down? And seeing how that feels. And I don't mean to use this as like a carrot for the 6 month course, but because we are limited on time, we are gonna go really deep into this in the 6 month course because we have a whole month dedicated to this topic. So I hope that's helpful. Do you have any follow-up questions?
No, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Because it is a really complex topic.
Yeah, I find it a little difficult to distinguish between like the butterflies and this excitement that you feel when you're falling in love. That's kind of also linked to insecurity, because like if there wasn't an element of insecurity, you wouldn't get this kind of butterfly feeling in your stomach, right?
Yeah, so
So
that's
it's a little bit, yeah, hard to um on a physical level to kind of draw a sharp line between the two. Yeah.
I actually love that you brought that up, Catherine, because the physiology of sexual activation feels very similar to stress activation because they're both sympathetic. It's both my heart rate increases, my palms get sweaty, my breath maybe gets faster. So it can be really confusing to differentiate between, is my body open and ready for a sexual experience, or am I feeling stress? And
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, what comes up for me with that idea is getting really familiar with the nuances for your own somatic experience of a stress response. So, getting really familiar with what does that feel like in my body, the stress response, and then what does sexual excitement feel like for me? And really like writing them down, taking a moment to meditate on it. And there will be differences between the two. And so then you can start to experience in the moment, okay, I know my stomach is clenched when I'm stressed. That's not present when I'm experiencing sexual activation. How does my stomach feel right now? Amanda, do you have any thoughts on that? And then we're going to close out.
Yeah, this is such a good point. I'm really glad that you brought this up, Katharina.
Yeah.
Because like Callie said, they both can feel like this sympathetic response, like your heart's racing, you feel these flutters in your belly. It also reminds me of just the way that we can equate danger with connection, like this presence of there being a risk or emotional unavailability can actually feel really exciting, and more exciting even than genuine safety, especially for people who have like deep trauma histories. The body might respond in this strong way to something that feels familiar, like chaos, but that's different than actual true desire. So I love what Callie said though about just really trying to notice the difference, like really getting clear in an exploration with yourself, like what does turn on and desire feel like versus what does stress feel like, and like really trying to tease them apart.
My last thing I'd like to drop in before we close, to answer that question too, is I have a free workshop on YouTube called Feeling a Yes, No, and Maybe in Your Body. And that's a great resource because that applies to this context 100%, where a yes and no feel so different. And so you can use that as a resource as well. It's on my YouTube and my podcast. So before we close, I'm going to again just plug my course, Shed. It's going to be effing awesome. That's why I keep talking about it. It's a 6 month slow group, again, where we go deep into these different aspects of fawning because fawning is such a nuanced, clearly such a nuanced topic. There's so much overcouplings we have around it as well. And so, really, just giving it the time and space and depth to go deep into each experience. So, Amanda's going to be there with us as well, supporting. She's going to be leading the community integration sessions that are going to be a monthly meeting. And it's just going to be really great. So, if you have any questions, you can send me a DM about that or email me at support@calismatics.com. And thank you guys for joining. I'm just gonna look at the chat.